Hello and welcome to Absolutely Not. Thank y'all so much for being here today. My name is Kay Mautau Thomas Stroll. My pronouns are they, them, and you can learn more about me on my website, www.kstroll.com. Real quick, if you appreciate the work that I do here or elsewhere, please visit my Ko-fi page where you can join the Warm and Boundary community, leave a tip, or buy one of my workbooks on boundaries and psychological safety. Support my work so I can continue to do this work. The keywords for this episode are resilience, empathy, and solidarity. I encourage y'all to look up the definitions of these words and compare them to the definitions you carry with you on a daily basis. If you need help comparing, please let me know. Today's episode is titled Even Stones Decay. And we'll be discussing this with my very special guest, olemāsina Pele Lubanski, they, them. Leo is a community organizer with a local Asian and Pacific Islander organization in Arizona. They serve as an advocate with lived experience for underrepresented communities like neurodivergent people and 2S LGBTQIA+ people among the Pacific Islander people. Leo believes taking into account a person's whole intersectional identity is paramount to understanding each other and uplifting one another in community solidarity. In their free time, Leo loves to draw, write, sing, drink tea, and cuddle with their 3 cats and their partner. They are Samoan, neurodivergent, ADHD and autistic, disabled, queer, trans, non-binary, Batama, and a child of an immigrant and a twin. Leo, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kay.
We kind of broke the ice before we clicked record, and I shared that like sometimes I'm really nervous around other Samoan people, but I don't feel that nervous anymore because we both are really honest about who we are. And even in your bio, you talked about how that's so important to accept the intersectionality of communities and the people within it. Leo, when did you learn that was paramount to being in community with other people?
I think I learned it like really young, honestly. Like I had that vibe when I was a kid, just from where I grew up here in Arizona, where there are basically no Pacific Islanders, and I just constantly felt like I was othered in groups, and I felt like I had to fit in and mold myself to what everybody else said or wanted. So then I realized it actually like came from a really specific moment in junior high. I was taking a test where we had those like Scantron sheets where you had to bubble in the answers. And at the time, you couldn't pick more than one like race or ethnicity, and it had it listed at the top. So in that moment, I was like maybe like 12, and I was just sitting there like, okay, I don't look like my white friends, and I don't look like any of my Latinx friends. So like I can't put any like white or like anything like that. And then the other option was Pacific Islander and then all the other ones. So I thought being mixed white and Pacific Islander, since I don't look too white, I'd pick Pacific Islander. And that's when I was like, okay, from now on, like I want to learn more about my culture and the language, because my mom didn't teach us that stuff growing up. And I really was like, okay, I'm going to be dedicated to this now. And then that's where that started. And then from there, I think that planted the seed to like always be doing self-reflection.
I like that you referred to that as a seed because it's this growth journey and this like being really reflective in our actions and having like accountability within self is a journey, and a seed has to be planted at some point. You have to have that thought like, I have to do this for me, and then in turn I will eventually do it for other people. Like I'm going to be able to create a safe space for other people. That self journey that you're taking and that seed, how has it led you to being able to speak for your communities as a whole? Like you started as self, how is that helping you be able to speak about like being neurodivergent and in the Pacific Islanders in the organization that you're a part of?
I think through all of the self-reflection that I do, because I've been told a lot by others that like I'm really self-reflective for my age. And I think they're just like thinking through how I wouldn't want anybody else to feel like as isolated as I do, as misunderstood as I did, or things like that, that having that empathy for not wanting anybody else to experience that really lets me um, come to community with, I think, a lens of listening to understand what people are going through and then figuring out how to help them versus prescribing something to somebody, which prescribing something to somebody feels very colonized. It feels very white. Like I think it's um I'm looking off at a picture on the side I have of me and my nana. Um she I think of her and how she was like a Samoan medicine woman when she was alive, and like on the island people would come from like all over to see her, um and something that helps me when I'm in community and trying to help and advocate is thinking about how she approached her medicine. So a little story about that is she essentially, my mom told me growing up that her grandma, my great grandma, my nana Hawaii, was a medicine woman and would go around, and sometimes back home in Samoa, like people would get like possessed by spirits or whatever. And instead of when I thought of that, when my mom told me, I thought of like exorcisms, like in the movies. And I was like, okay, that's pretty gnarly. But my mom told me my nana wouldn't do that. She would talk to them. She would like talk the spirits out of people instead of using violence or coercion or threats. And that's where I thought, oh, like you can use the power of relation, connection, um, like words to help someone get out of a really tough situation, whether it's like a possession or like, something more like mundane, maybe. Like someone's just having a rough day. Like you don't have to fix, you don't have to like extract, you can be in community with that tough, scary thing and let things happen and let kind of things fall where they will.
I love this. My favorite part of what you just talked about, besides your nana, like amazing person, the prescribing something to someone that you don't even know, that you don't have connection with, that you don't have relationship with, and you talked about the power of connection. One of the words you use to describe yourself, your identities, is fatama or fatama, and that word is brand new to even our community, like some to Samoan people. Like I didn't know that word till like last year, and I knew fafafinge since I was like a really young. The connection with ourselves and our own self-reflection will lead us to words and connection, and like the ability to find different prescriptions for people, so we're not prescribing some shit to them that they don't connect with or don't align with. Or how did you learn the word fatama?
So I think I learned it online. Like I saw it in someone's bio, like on Instagram or like Tumblr back in the Tumblr days. Um, and I was just thinking, like, I remember the first thing I did was I asked my mom, and I was like, Mom, like, okay, so I know what fafafing is. What's fatama? And like, even what I think is so funny about that word is there's like debate on like kind of what it is, because we know fafafing is just fafafing. But fatama, like you said, like some people say fatama, some people say fatama. Like we can't even like decide on like what it is. And for me, and I attribute this to my autism personally of like finding patterns and wanting things to align and make sense, is I saw fatama and fatama and I was like, fatama makes more sense to me because if fa is like the way of, and then tama being like man, boy, male, it mirrors fa'afine because the word for woman isn't fine, it's fafine. So that made more sense to me. But even sometimes when I ask like my family back home, like they say it's fafatama, and like even there, I'm kind of like, I don't know, is it? Like I don't like it like I want things to like make sense, but I also try to check myself when I'm in those situations that I'm not again like prescribing or like telling someone that they're like wrong for like saying it's fafatama because I don't know. Like I wasn't raised in, like I mentioned before, like I wasn't raised in the culture. Like I was raised here in America in diaspora. My mom wanted my brother, my twin brother, and I to like not be any more ostracized that I like as possible. So she assimilated, which a lot of immigrants do, and teach their kids. So I didn't learn about that stuff till till maybe like seeking out social media and being like well into adulthood by then.
And I really like that you are so open and willing to say, I don't know. I don't know, which is why I'm asking these questions, which is why I have so much respect for you if you're able to tell me, and which is why I'm just like, okay, if you want to say it like that, you can say it like that, and I'm going to continue to find patterns that work best for me. Has there ever been a time where you have said that to someone and been like, well, I'm going to continue to find patterns the way that works best for me, and then been like, why would you do that? Or been very dismissive of how you want to move forward, I guess, with your life and learning?
Yes, there is a very specific instance. It also has to do with like being someone. So there's a dance in Samoan called a tawalunga. The tawalunga is usually done by like a woman in the family. It's like also known as like the Samoan money dance. Um, and I was supposed to do one for like the only local Pacific Islander cultural festival, like back in college. So my mom was trying to teach me, and I remember the first thing she tried to teach me was that in doing talalunga or in doing siva, Samoan dance, um, you move with the rhythm of the music. It's not choreographed. Like you don't do things in a sequence. You just kind of do them as it comes to you. So that every tamalunga someone could do will be different every time they do it, even if it's to the same song or yeah. So I remember her telling me that. And at the time, I didn't know I was neurodivergent yet. So in my head, I was just like experiencing all this anguish because I was thinking, I cannot do that. Like my brain to body connection can't just like flow out a dance. Like I need to know, like at the very least, I was like, can you tell me the translation of the song? Because that'll help inform what I do to move. But if I don't know the language, if I don't know what the song is saying, then I'm gonna forget what I'm doing. And she was just telling me like over and over. And I know it was with love because my mom is the oldest daughter out of like double digit kids, like double digit amount of kids. And she's one of the only ones that left Samoa. So she's like the oldest, most like successful daughter. And she was supposed to be like the taupo or like, like matriarch kind of caretaker of the family, but she left because she didn't want to do that. So she would have been teaching me this stuff like back home, probably in a different life. But here, and her not having like shared that with me when I was young and growing up and was able to like understand it better, potentially as a kid with a sponge brain, um, I was just like, why are you telling me to do something that I can't do? And I could see that there was like this disappointment in her face that like she was just like, I don't understand how else to explain it. And so I told her like, okay, in this case, I'm not going to do it with the Talmuna then, because I don't want to go up there and not only embarrass myself, but embarrass the family because like that cultural festival is only once a year. It's so rare. There's not a lot of them here in Arizona, and the audience is going to be Papangi people, it's going to be white people. So I didn't want to do that to my mom, to my family, to me. So then I actually like turned it around and decided to do what's called a fono ava or an ava ceremony. I took my brother up there with me. We did this ceremony about making a drink out of the A.K.A root. And the actual like day of, it kind of went like wild and ridiculous, and like a bunch of technical stuff went wrong, but like we still did it. And that like really cemented my connection or my fanganga to my brother, which was really rocky at the time, and we've been like super close ever since. I just turned into like this beautiful thing, but I still like clearly remember my mom just being like, I don't know what to tell you then. Like, I can't teach you if you're not going to do it this way. When I was trying to accommodate myself by asking questions and getting her to explain things to me.
And sorry, I had like 60 million flashbacks while you were describing that because I've had the same experiences. I also remember thinking about the boys' dances and how they're like so much fucking easier, like a lot easier. And they have sequence, like they literally like have okay, but yeah. So I remember, and I don't know if that's like transness or neurodivergence, but I remember being like, can I do the boys' dances and getting slapped? And I think about that a lot. And this is in a lot of different cultures, not only Samoan culture, even in organizations, like there's not a lot of room for different types of people in processes or in what's going on. And the title of this episode talks about like that's gonna wear on you over time. How has that weighed on you at all? Like people not making space for you to do it your own way.
I think it's made me really go inward and try to see, like, it kind of, I think two things happened. um I go inward and try to see if there's anything I can do to fit whatever mold someone is trying to put me into, from people pleasing tendencies, from not wanting to be rejected because of things like rejection sensitive dysphoria, from having ADHD, um, and having rejection be even perceived rejection being like a painful experience. Um, so I think I tend to go inward and self-isolate and like reflect and see if there's anything I can do to change, whether it's changing for my own values or sometimes when I'm in that people pleasing mode, changing for somebody else. Um, and I think the other thing I do is become even more expressive in certain contexts. Uh, and try to think of how to do what I still want to do or need to do to accommodate myself, and try to find that compromise. And I think, I mean, the you mentioned the title of the episode too, I believe, just now. It comes from a Samoan proverb, which is "Epala lema'a ai lepala lehupu," which is even stones decay, but words endure. And that's where I think sometimes like the physical actions people take toward me, or like the way things happen, don't really stick with me. It's the words people say and like how they say them. So I think what my instinct is to take that and like alchemize it into something that will help me, after dwelling on it a little bit. But I try to like make it something that will actually help me in the long run.
I like that because it's still accepting that like this is not something I'm going to be able to move forward with. Like there's no way that I'm going to be able to do what you're asking me to do. And so I have to go inward and figure it out with myself before I can share with you like, hey, we have to do it a different way. Has there ever been a time where you've imposed that type of thinking? Because growing up with a Samoan mom, like that thinking stayed with me for a really long time. Like it's this way or nothing, and very like what do they call it? Like Basamo, like thinking. Has there ever been a time where you held on to that thinking and imposed it on another person? and kind of like, hey, this is the way I need it done, and I will not budge. Or you won't be able to do it.
I'm sure there are instances. I can't think of anything in particular. Yeah. I think also kind of speaking to like having empathy and compromise, I try not to do that. I'm sure I have before, but because I know what that feels like, I try not to be like imposing or like, I know there's a difference between setting a boundary and then letting whatever happens with the other person or party happen, and like trying to say, like, you're not going to talk to me this way, and that's my boundary, which is not correct. And I relate to what you said a lot with the someone mom, and like I remember a lot of mom being like, "You're gonna do this because I said so. You're gonna do it because like you're supposed to do it," even though she didn't explain why. Um, yeah, I know I didn't really answer the question, but
So has there ever been a time that you crossed somebody's boundaries? It sounds like you know what boundaries are. Has there ever been a time that you crossed someone else's boundaries?
yes. Um, so there's this there's this person that I was in a relationship with online. We knew each other from I used to write on creative writing forums a lot when I was young. Um, and so we found each other there. We became fast friends. This person lived like across the states, and I was like 14, 15 when I first met them. And we were friends through them getting married, through them having a child, like just so many ups and downs together. Um, and we never got to meet each other in person, but we call each other on the phone all the time. I would like virtually babysit their kid a lot, like all this stuff. And they're also like severely disabled. So when the pandemic hit, um, we talked a lot about how disabled people are treated and boundaries around things like posting or talking about like going out and doing non-essential things, if that was a thing that I was ever doing. Um, I didn't really happen very often, but things like our intensities in terms of the precautions that we're taking were different. And I understood that they had to be because they're in a like a more severe position than me. So uh like we're friends. Fast forward to beginning of this year, I proposed to my fiance, and thank you. And this person was helping me with the proposal and like figuring everything out, and just they've known my fiance since we got together. Um, and then I had to talk with my fiance about like how to do a wedding, as me and her are still very COVID conscious. So we were kind of like, I was like, should we go to the courthouse? Like, I don't know what to do. And my fiance put up the boundary that she wanted to have an in-person wedding, even if it was really small, for the sake of her parents. Um, and so I said, okay, like I agreed that that was something that I was also willing to do after hearing her out. So then I knew I had to tell my friend this, and I knew my friend was not going to take it positively. I was hoping she would, or I was hoping they would, but I told them, and they cut me off. Like just they were like, all right, don't contact me again, don't contact my kid again. I'm blocking you. Bye. And I really had to sit with not only the expectation of hoping that there would be some grace for me because we were friends for so long, and then realizing that it wasn't so much necessarily about them having grace for me, it was about them doing what they needed to do, and I don't fault them for that. I'm really sad that like our decade long friendship is over, but I also could see the writing on the wall, because when I knew I had to tell them, I like broke down. And my fiance was like, if you're having this reaction to trying to tell somebody something that you're doing to celebrate something, that's not healthy. And I really had to sit with that. And I even, like, I made sure to tell them that, like, no matter what was going on with them, if they did want to ever rekindle the friendship, I would. Like, I don't hold it against them that they did that, and I would gladly take them back with open arms. It's just, I know that that's what they need to do. And I had to really, it also informed my work, my organizing work, in terms of like knowing that not everybody is going to see eye to eye with you, and that you have to be okay with that and meet them where they're at.
Thank you so much for sharing this experience. And I know with ADHD, and I'm pretty sure I have like a sprinkle of autism. Like I really need to go check that out. But it is hard. Humans are really fucking hard. Like that sounds so messy and so like, and because of like the way my brain works, it's easy for me to connect dots. It's so easy for me to connect dots. I'm like, I am 100% positive this is how this is gonna go. But then when I have to do it, I'm still like, it still feels like somebody exploded in front of my face, even though I literally have done it like 60 million times, like in my brain already, and I knew what was gonna happen. So I think and I don't think I've made this clear on this show, so I'm really happy that you said it in this episode, is that boundaries are messy, relationships are messy, and sometimes they get very like in between. Like you're going to have to prioritize certain things, certain values, certain people in your life. It's just going to happen. But communicating that nonetheless is still extremely important. Even if you play it 60 times in your brain, you're still going to have to communicate it. Because you could have just like cut that person off like already before telling them, and then because you knew what was going to happen. But instead, you still had the conversation. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing that here, because somebody is going to be listening to this and like, well, shit. Like, like I have to go, like, I have to go talk to this person about like their needs and my needs. And like you said, it informed you to be a better organizer for the work that you're doing just by being honest about the relationship with that person. Thank you so much. To the people who are listening to this and thinking, well, shit, I guess I have to go talk to somebody tomorrow and have this heart-wrenching conversation that I've already done like 60 times. What would be the top 3 tips you would share with them about having this conversation?
One of my tips would be to, this would be kind of an unconventional tip, but to check in with your body first. I really had to, in that conversation I had with that person, um, like I clocked that like I was getting activated like in my chest, and I felt really heavy. There's a lot of crying happening, and being able to express those things out of your body so that you can be clear, have more clarity with your words. So that way the words that you say will endure in the way that you want them to go back to the proverb. Another thing I would say to do is to take your time. Don't let the that feeling of rejection or worry, anxiety take the time from you and push you. There can be a little bit of a healthy push with those emotions, I think, to have the conversation at all. But I think it does a disservice to you and the other person to rush through that and not take your time, be clear to explain where you're coming from, and also making sure to tell them or like hear their side and not stonewall somebody. and just like say your piece and then like peace out. I think it's hard to do. It's very hard to do. But to listen to the other person, so long as it's safe to, but to listen to the other person, what they have to say, see if there can be a compromise. In that situation, I did offer like that we would be taking like COVID precautions in certain ways, and that we would have like we're gonna have a virtual live stream for that too, not just for that person and their family, but for like my family back home and like all these other people who can't physically make it. I wanted to make it accessible. So like trying to be clear and be like, can we like compromise in this way? Like I know you probably aren't going to, you might not like it, but I'm trying to maintain the relationship and not burn the bridge. So yeah, being clear. And having love for yourself, like it's so hard to do this and to be messy, be vulnerable. I do joke that like vulnerability is my superpower, but I recognize it's not that way for everybody. A lot of my really close friends, vulnerability is tough for them, and I think we attract each other. But just to be kind, know that like, and in that kindness, know that like a no or a yes is not always going to stay that way. Um, as a quick like example of that, when I came out as non-binary to my mom, she did not take it well. And so I did put up a boundary with her around like, okay, I'm not going to reach out to you unless you like, and if you reach out to me, if I can't like handle it, I'm not going to like engage. And so that meant I didn't talk to her for like months. And she's the type of mom who was like, call me every day when you move out. So that was a big deal. She also disowned me at some point in that process. So we kind of did it, we went back and forth on that. And then eventually she came back around. Like it took a while, but she started using my pronouns. She started using the name I chose for myself. And I also recognized that was difficult for her, knowing me, naming me, like, raising me in one way. And also recognizing that she said that I was just a tomboy. So I was like, well, maybe in another life, my mom would be trans if she had those words, if she had those resources. So having that like kindness. And then that no became a yes, and we're super close now.
If I didn't take anything else from this episode, it is that this shit is so messy. It's just like, and anything is possible. Like even the reruns that we do in our brain, like that could possibly not happen. Maybe that person's gonna be cool as fuck with the boundary that you set, and we just like catastrophize that in our brain. But we'll never know unless we put in the work and actually do this shit and be vulnerable and prioritize like trust and safety and respect in our relationships, and ensuring that the people that we're in relationship with are doing the same thing. I really appreciate you sharing all of this here, because quite honestly, there are not a lot of Samoan people who are talking about vulnerability and like emotional, and that's a lot of cultures. So that's a lot of cultures, and I'm also Black, like in the Black community as well. And I love that there are so many of us who are talking about it and want our communities to be in solidarity and in relationship with these super important things. Are there any last minute sprinkles that you can share with the audience?
That it's like it's super cliche, but just and I already said it, but to reemphasize, be kind to other people, be kind to yourself, and let the emotions come through, because if you don't, they show up in your body and it can literally hurt, like in your heart and in your body. And I don't want anybody to hurt more than they, I don't want anybody to hurt, like, period. And and that it's okay to be vulnerable. It sucks sometimes, but it's a thing that's okay to do.
I know somebody's going to hear that and finally have a conversation that they've been meaning to have probably for like a whole year or something like that. Thank you so much for everything you have shared today. And to anybody who's listening, Leo's information will be in the show notes when this is published. So please reach out to them. Yeah, keep saying absolutely not to everything that's unaligned and setting those boundaries. We will see you next time. Bye.